Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. Later in the show, we will talk to the mayor of Miramar about Miami-Dade County's plan to try and build a trash incinerator just south of their city and on the edge of the Everglades. He opposes it and is threatening a lawsuit. But first, the race for the United States Senate is set, with Democrat Debbie Mucarsel-Powell taking on Republican Rick Scott. If Democrats were to win this race, it would almost certainly mean Democrats would retain control of the Senate. But that's a big if, as Scott and the Republicans have a clear advantage in Florida. Joining me now to discuss how she can overcome that advantage is former Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell. Thank you very much for coming in.
Good morning, Jim. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with that. One of the challenges I think you face is the very perception that I outlined at the beginning of the show, the idea that Republicans have a clear advantage. Ron DeSantis won the state by 19 points in 22. Republicans have more than 1 million registered voter advantage over Democrats. So how do you beat Rick Scott?
So from the very beginning, Jim, when we launched the campaign, I launched the campaign over a year ago, I have been bringing Republicans, Democrats, and independents to the fold because the issues that we're facing here in the state of Florida should never be political. The affordability crisis, people paying skyrocketing property insurance rates. This insurance crisis began under Rick Scott. People can't afford to pay for their groceries. Yes, when he was governor. The issue of government interference and taking away our freedoms, our rights, this is an issue that really strikes a chord for Floridians. We have always had that independent streak in us, and I can tell you that at the end of the day, one thing that people don't realize is that women are energized, creating a movement, the men right next to them, beside them, making sure that we protect a woman's right to choose, but also independents. Independent voters are done with the extremism that they've been seeing from Tallahassee, from Rick Scott. Rick Scott has been one of the most extreme senators, as you know. He's the least bipartisan senator that we have in the United States Senate. He has voted against infrastructure investments, resiliency, against the CHIPS Act, which would put a firm hand against China and bring manufacturing jobs to our state. He obviously supports a very extreme ban on abortion. He has said it time and time again, the 6-week abortion ban. He has co-sponsored a national abortion ban. And he's done nothing to help Florida families. If anything, he wrote a plan that would raise taxes on middle-class families, that would sunset Medicare and Social Security. He's also been very vocal about repealing the Affordable Care Act, and those are issues that I've worked on my entire career.
So you've mentioned a couple of times in there abortion. And clearly this is a driving issue, not just nationally, but here in Florida. We have the constitutional amendment, Amendment 4, on the ballot. Currently, Florida has a 6-week abortion ban, which largely is basically a virtual ban on abortions in Florida. This is also an issue raising nationally, and Donald Trump was asked in Michigan this week about how he would vote on that constitutional amendment, and I want to play for you that sound.
The state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6-week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
Now, I should make clear that even though it sounded like he had just come out in support of the amendment, his campaign quickly put out a note saying that that's not exactly what he said. He is not saying that he's going to vote for it, and he's going to address that issue later. The issue of abortion is really, it's almost the dog catching the car. You know, Republicans don't know what to do with it now.
Well, I mean, I think that he's seeing the writing on the wall. He understands that here in Florida, these policies, the 6-week abortion ban, doesn't reflect the values of Floridian. It's such an extreme ban that over 60% of Floridians, regardless of political affiliation, support voting for this amendment. It should be a private decision between a woman, her doctor, her family, her faith, free of government interference, especially free of people like Rick Scott. I mean, I have to share something with you, Jim. He has been talking about the abortion issue and talking in a way that is extremely disturbing. He actually had a conversation with students at the University of Miami. I happened to have come in towards the end of that class and heard him speak. And I can tell you that the lies that he's saying about killing babies, crushing their skull. I mean, using extremely disturbing language. And I watched those young women in that classroom. There were over 250 students in that classroom. And I saw them feel so uncomfortable. And as a mom, I can tell you, I would never want my daughter to hear a man like Rick Scott talk to them about something that is integral and central to our bodies, to our healthcare. And it's definitely a private issue for a woman. And listening to Rick Scott, it was so disturbing. And there were young women that came to me after that class and said to me, thank you so much for speaking up against those false attacks, the disinformation that Rick Scott is using. This is so private for us. And it made me even more bold to make sure that I stand up for the young women across our state, for the women across our state, also for the young men that are with us, standing beside us saying, Rick Scott has no place in this conversation. How dare politicians like him or the ex-president have any decision?
Politically, the challenge is, how do you convert some of those women, some of those men, Republicans, who may vote for instance, Rick Scott or Donald Trump, but also vote yes on the amendment? We found in a poll that we did, CBS statewide, a few months ago, that upwards of 40% of Trump voters in Florida say they will vote for Amendment 4. How do you convince them that it's not just, you shouldn't also support Donald Trump? If you vote for the constitutional amendment on abortion, you shouldn't be voting for Donald Trump and or Rick Scott.
Yeah, and we have to remind every single voter in our state that we are in this mess right now, facing a 6-week abortion ban in the state of Florida because the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And Republicans like Rick Scott, like Donald Trump have been saying, leave it to the states. And what does that mean? It means a 6-week abortion ban here for the state of Florida. So if they vote for Amendment 4 to enshrine in the state constitution the right for a woman to make that decision with her doctor, free of government interference, it'll mean nothing if we pass this amendment and then Donald Trump gets back to the White House, Rick Scott gets reelected to the Senate, and they push a national abortion ban.
Now, Donald Trump has said he would not support a national abortion ban.
And the question is, let's look at what's happened that has brought us to this point. I mean, he was very proud to say that he took responsibility for the Supreme Court justices, the nominations, the confirmations, which brought us to this point. So we need to make sure that people look at their record, their past record. But let's get back to Rick Scott for a second, because he wrote this plan that I just mentioned. I see it as a preamble to Project 2025. Rick Scott has been very much aligned with Project 2025. Not only do they want to ban abortion nationally, they want to criminalize doctors and healthcare providers for providing that critical healthcare for a woman. We're living in the United States of America. Jim, my mother brought me here for freedom, for safety, for opportunities. And we are now living in a state where women have to travel when they can't terminate a pregnancy, when it's posing a threat to her life. I have had multiple conversations with healthcare providers and also women that are being now forced to travel out of state because they can't get the healthcare that they need here in the state of Florida.
How do you present that message if you don't have the money to be able to do it? I don't get the sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee is helping you the way that they're helping other incumbents, you know, who are more vulnerable than you, who's trying to turn Florida, you know, blue in terms of the Rick Scott race. How do you do that, and why aren't they investing in you?
So, from the beginning, and you and I have had that conversation, I have been running this campaign. This is my campaign. I am not relying on any party, any organization. I've always known that we have to build a team to do exactly what we need to do to defeat Rick Scott. And my primary results showed the strength of the campaign. It showed the support, the very strong support, overwhelmingly support from everyone across the state. I've been traveling for over a year to red counties, to blue counties, to bring everyone to the fold. This is a grassroots campaign.
What does having Harris at the top of the ticket do now for your chances compared to 45 days ago when Joe Biden was at the top of the ticket?
Well, what we've seen is that there are over 30,000 new volunteers that have signed up to volunteer not only in her campaign, but also to help me defeat Rick Scott, there's a new energy on the ground. I mean, what you see on television with those rallies, that's happening. I was in Sarasota last week, and there were over 200 women that were so ready to put in the work to make the changes that we need here for our families in the state of Florida. So it's translating. It's bringing up young voters that are registering, that are excited to come out and vote. And so we may not have the money that Rick Scott will have, but I can tell you that the people that are on the ground, if you come with me, and I invite you to come with me, Jim, I'm traveling everywhere, you will see that energy, and you'll have a different perspective on what's happening.
Rick Scott has already declared that he wants to become the Republican leader in the Senate, sort of bypassing this election and already looking ahead to what's next. Do you find that insulting at all?
I mean, I'm laughing a little bit because he barely got any votes when he ran the first time for Senate Majority Leader, and the arrogance is going to get him at the end, right? I mean, let him think that that's what he wants to do. I'm not paying attention to that. I'm paying attention to the families that I'm talking to every single day, but I do remind people that as much as I find it a little funny that he's so arrogant and full of himself. It's serious also. If he does get reelected, and if he does somehow get the support in the Senate to become Senate Majority Leader, it would mean raising taxes for middle-class families. It would mean no leadership in reducing the cost of insurance that we're facing here in the state. It will mean no investments on resiliency. He's against any sort of issue or bill that will protect our environment here in the state of Florida. And he will push for a national abortion ban. He is aligned with the Heritage Foundation, with the most extreme organization that is pushing Project 2025. And so people need to pay attention, not only in Florida, but across the country.
So much of this race may come down to just sort of turnout and also tapping into voters who aren't necessarily reflected in the polls, energizing new voters. Are you getting that sense at all that that's happening out there?
I am, and I'll tell you another story also, because yes, I mean, Republicans may have an advantage on voter registration, but I have Republicans that come to my events that tell me, I am so done with what the Republican Party has become. They don't represent me. I wanted to meet you. I'm going to support you in this race. I was at Trader Joe's the other day. I had 30 minutes to get some milk for my mom and the kids at home, and there was a woman that came to me, a Hispanic woman, very serious, and she wanted to talk to me. She recognized me, and she said, I want you to know I'm a Republican. I live in Kendall. I have 10 people in my house. We're all voting for you for Senate.
Do you get to say, are there going to be debates? Are you going to be debating? I mean, I'm sure you want to.
Yes, I'm ready.
And has he accepted?
We'll see if he has the courage to debate me.
All right. If he wants, you guys can come here. I'd love to have you on.
I'm ready, Jim.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk to you again before Election Day, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
And of course, Rick Scott has every opportunity to come in. We've offered that opportunity. If he wants to come in and sit down, we'd love to have him. All right, when we come back, is building an incinerator on the edge of the Everglades a good idea? The mayor of Miramar will join us to tell us why it's not. Stay with us.